The federal government yesterday said it needs vital weapons to end the insurgency ravaging the northeast of the country, expressing concern that a delay in getting armaments from world powers has been hampering the push against the insurgents. Government says the refusal of some world powers to sell weapons to the country and the delay in supplying the country weapons the country had already paid for were undermining its anti-terror campaign. Minister of Information and Culture, Lai Mohammed, said he believed that the international community could help Nigeria in fighting terrorism better than if they were doing that now. He spoke a couple of days after President Muhammadu Buhari had said that Nigeria was expecting to take delivery of military weapons and aircraft from Jordan, China, and the United States to reinvigorate its terror war. So now we've been able to narrow it down to weapons. If we get weapons in time, we'll be able to fight. Some world powers have not been cooperating as regards getting weapons for us. Is this all we will need?
I think we all know, and I think that there's no gainsaying that weapons play a huge role in prosecuting this war, because time and time again you hear, oh, the insurgents are more sophisticated, they have weaponry, and you even hear that from, those at the front lines, the soldiers, some of whom have now decided to leave the Nigerian army, saying, we do not have, you cannot send us on this suicide mission because we do not have the weapons, sophisticated weapons to prosecute this war. But I think that the minister is right, that, the international community plays a huge role. Yeah. After all, the true test of friendship is in time of adversity. Yeah. You would recall that way back in 2014, before the general elections in 2015, there was that news, that the United States had refused to sell weaponry to Nigeria. Mm. And the reasons given by the U.S. then was that, the country has laws that do not allow them to sell arms to countries that their military are allegedly involved in gross, poor human rights conduct, So that was the excuse then. But the president did say some days ago that we are expecting weapons from the U.S., from Jordan, from China. I'm trying to narrow it down because the minister did not tell us which countries are refusing to sell to us. Mm. From the last we heard, U.S. is selling to us, China is selling to us, Jordan is selling to us. Mm. I wish he told us the countries that were not selling to us. And then why is there a delay? Because he also said we've paid for some, we're yet to get them. Even as little as spare parts for some of these things that we need, they are not coming. So what exactly is the problem here? Why are they not selling to us?
You spoke about spare parts. Doctor, correct me if I'm wrong. I thought we had a deal with Innoson at some point, to be able to fabricate some spare parts for the Air Force. How's that going, sir?
Well, I think what we're dealing with basically, which the Minister of Information is drawing attention to, is the fact that despite the general acknowledgement of the fact that the war against terrorism is a global challenge, it's a transnational challenge, it's an asymmetrical war, the nature of which is unknown to many countries, like Nigeria, dealing with it for the first time. In the face of that, there is need for global solidarity, global cooperation. However, within the context of that, those premises, what we have seen is that there is geopolitics involved. Geopolitics in terms of how country A assists the other country, how country C engages the other country, even when they are all trying to come together to work in concert to achieve global peace and security. This is not the first time that Nigeria will face this challenge. You will recall that the Jonathan administration faced the same challenge. The Americans, although they engaged Nigeria at the level of training and all of that, bluntly refused at some point to support Nigeria in terms of purchase of arms and ammunition, or hardware and software, because they accused Nigeria of human rights abuses, which was strongly, refuted by the Nigerian government at that time, because there was no concrete proof. The position of the government at that time was that the human rights abuses being alleged on the part of the Nigerian military was fictitious, and that the United States should have been more concerned about the violence, the evil being imposed on Nigeria by a set of, terrorists and bandits who wanted to compromise the sovereignty of Nigeria. I recall that President Jonathan held on this particular subject at least 2 meetings with then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. But when the Americans did not help us, we turned towards Israel. And I recall, you know, a meeting in the office of the Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu. By the way, his office is smaller than this studio. Very small office, but packed with history. And it was very friendly. It was a meeting between Nigeria and himself, and also between the two national security advisors. And we had great hopes at that time that we would get the support. But that didn't happen. And what we discovered, I cannot give you the details, is that the Americans put pressure on Israel not to go further on whatever agreements were reached. At some point, the Jonathan government turned towards Russia. And we got some cooperation from Russia, and also we had something going with South Africa. And that was why, towards the election, you could see an improvement in the war against terrorism under the Jonathan administration. People thought it was political, but it wasn't political. It was just at the time that we were able to get the support in terms of hardware and software. However, this same administration, what the Minister of Information has disclosed, is that they are also facing the same challenge. He talked about unsubstantiated arguments being put forward by some countries. He didn't name those countries, but you can immediately imagine that those unsubstantiated arguments are within the context of geopolitics. However, I would like to draw Alhaji Lai Mohammed's attention to the statement made recently by General Anderson, who is the person in charge of the U.S. Operational Command within the West African region, when he assured us that, look, the U.S. was ready to provide support for Nigeria, having discovered that ISIS and other groups are taking over the West African region. But although General Anderson added a caveat that Nigeria has to take the lead. And I return to that point because, yes, we need international cooperation, but Nigeria also has to play its own part in terms of being proactive, in terms of engaging the international community, and in terms of, you know, showing, you know, a commitment. So those unsubstantiated arguments, you know, whatever law they have in the United States, Nigeria's position is that those arguments are unsubstantiated. We made the same argument under President Jonathan. It's the same argument that the Buhari administration is pushing forward.
And you have information on that law?
The U.S. law talk about the Leahy law,
that
bans the country from selling weapons to countries whose military are judged to have gross misconduct of human rights.
Thank you so much for that. That's all on news headlines. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll have the trio of Rotus, Odiri, Maka, Wilson, and Aaron Akerjola to give us updates on Africa, global business, and COVID-19. Stay with us. Still the morning show right here on the Rise News channel. We're going to have a very dependable Rotus Odiri here to give us Africa business update. Rotus, over to you this morning.
Good morning, Rufai. Good morning, Doctor, and good morning, Adesuwa.
Morning.
So we begin. Well, this is inspired by Regulates, Nate Dogg and Warren G's song from 1994, the big hits. We're talking about regulators.
You're a rap head, man.
Yeah, exactly.
You're a rap head.
Yeah, so are you, Rufai. So we kick off with the NBC. I remember back in June we talked about the code, the National Broadcasting Code that was supposed to be revised. If we have an image, I believe, of that code that we put up, there it is. Amendments to the 6th edition. We talked about this back in June. We also looked at a non-exclusive portion of that I circled in red, saying that broadcasters shall ensure that access by all pay TV platforms to premium content in sports and news, in order to generate effective competition, shall, going by this amendment, they shall offer those, that is content creators that purchase broadcasting rights to these, sports and news bits, shall be, we have to give those away to local content creators in order to I don't know, spread the love, if you will, or be able to allow them to broadcast the same content. But the issue here was that, these content creators, these broadcasters, they purchase them. So why should I have to give them away? We also had Jason Njoku's tweets. Remember that he said that the new this amendment is illegal. It compels sub-licensing of content. Effectively turning private enterprise into state property. Interference in markets. He says it destroys pay TV in Nigeria. So our sister publication, This Day, actually reported this yesterday. The board, there's been a back and forth between the board of the National Broadcasting Corporation and the Ministry of Information and Culture, Mr. Lai Mohammed. They had a press conference yesterday. There's a summary of what they discussed. If you take a look at that summary, they essentially said that, you know, if this was held yesterday, that they do not recognize this amendment of the of this broadcasting code. They only recognize the 6th edition of the code, which was, you know, passed back in 2019. They say that 55 institutions and stakeholders also joined them in rejecting the revised code, and they've accused Lai Mohammed of acting unilaterally. There's also a couple quotes here as well. Let's look at the first quote from them. They said, the danger of allowing the unilateral amendment of the broadcasting code to stand is that investors in the industry will lose confidence in the stability of the broadcast ecosystem has enjoyed till date before the advent of the current Minister of Information. So they really went after him there. That's the board. Secondly, there's a second quote from them as well. Said our president and his team have worked so hard to galvanize local and foreign investment in Nigeria. Allowing obnoxious policies to take root in our investment culture will spell doom for creativity, enterprise, diversity, and the general development of broadcasting in Nigeria. The thing here to point out, though, is that part of the amendment of these rules included that increase in fines for hate speech. That is the, it was initially 500,000 naira. They opted to 5 million. Even though they've rejected it, you know that the radio station that was in the news, I think you guys have talked about this already, was fined the 5 million for having the former deputy governor of the CBN who made some allegation to a sitting governor, which they said was inciting folks, and they fined them. So, you know, if you don't, you know, they're rejecting it, but the NBC has already implemented it. So there's a back and forth between the board and the NBC. So we'll have to see how it plays out. Again, this is in our sister publication This Day, so really good coverage of that. We move on to more regulation. Lagos State is looking to regulate ride-hailing. Here's a statement that they put out in their new regulations for ride-hailing business. It said, this is their justification from Lagos State Ministry of Transportation. It said there is an urgent need to upgrade the existing guidelines for the operation of taxi business in Lagos State based on the reality of insecurity and safety confronting the sector, as people of questionable characters have hijacked the process, which has resulted in increased road crashes, kidnapping, robbery, pollution, and insecurity, thereby eroding the confidence of the general public in the taxi business. Again, this is the justification of Lagos State. So they now put together some rules and regulations for service providers and taxi cabs. Let's take a look at that. Okay, so first of all, let me explain this. Service entities are your Uber and your Bolt. They do not own or operate any vehicles. They just connect a rider with a driver. So those are service entities. Then you've got the taxi and app operators like EcoCab, which I don't believe they're in operation yet, but EcoCab supposedly is working with the Lagos State government to onboard taxi drivers and so on that actually own and operate vehicles on their platform. So they are differentiating the two of them. So if you're a service entity, this is effective August the 20th. If you've got less than 1,000 cars in operation, you're paying a 10 million naira licensing fee. You can pick your exchange rate. That's about $26,000. If you've got more than 1,000 vehicles, you pay a 25 million naira licensing fee. Then to renew it, if you've got greater than 1,000 cabs, you pay a 10 million naira licensing fee. If you've got less than 1,000 vehicles in operation, you pay a 5 million renewal fee. That's for the service entities. For the taxi app operators, for the guys who own and operate physical vehicles, if you've got less than 50 cabs, you pay a 5 million naira licensing fee. If you've got more than 50 cabs, it's 10 million. To renew it, if you've got less than 50 cabs, it's 1.5 million naira. If it's greater than that, to renew it, it's 3 million. Also, look at that below there. It says there's a 10% service charge on each ride. So each time you use one of these cabs and you pay for your ride, 10% is supposed to go to Lagos State. And also, this one has really got people going nuts. The last one there, vehicles must be brand new or not older than 3 years. I mean, you can take your pick at how this creates issues for people to enter into the space. That's new entrants. How many people are driving a brand new car, or at least a 2017 model of a brand new car? If you had to spend 20 million naira on a new car that you want to use to operate in this business, how much do you make in revenue when you deduct what you pay to Uber or Bolt that is left to you net? How long will it take you, if you make 5 million a year, to make that 20 million back? So there's been a lot of pushback with regards to that law. Lagos State is saying that, again, we've seen the justification. They're saying it's crime and insecurity. That's the same justification they used for the motorcycles when they put Gokada and Max NG and all the other guys pretty much out of business. That's to say, it was insecurity and safety. Lastly, South Africa GDP Q2. Look at that. I drew an arrow to the right of the chart. Look at that. This is from the Statistics Office, the South Africa's version of our Bureau of Statistics. They are projecting that on an annualized basis, second quarter GDP for South Africa will fall by 32%. There's another entity that said it could be 48. That's again on an annualized basis. That's about 8 or 9% quarterly. So there's a big drop expected in South Africa for Q2. We've seen it in UK, we've seen it in the US, and we're waiting for our own numbers in Nigeria. They're going to be pretty ugly as well. And that's our update.
Well, Rotus, I mean, you've used up all the time, so leaving us no opportunity to make a comment. I think that the Nigerian Broadcasting Commission story is a very important story. And the fear that has been expressed is that, look, that revised National Broadcasting Code, first, the stakeholders said they were not involved, although I recall that the minister said he invited them to meetings. I think it's very disturbing to hear that even the NBC board is also complaining that it was the minister that took a unilateral position. Now, the minister probably still owes the public and stakeholders some explanation. Under Section 39 of the Constitution, people have the right to the freedom of expression. Now, to say that anybody who insults a governor or the president or the vice president or, any major public official is guilty of hate speech and the station that broadcasts it could be fined 5 million naira. That really is disturbing because it looks like a return to the military era. And I guess that there will be more opportunity to debate this and to draw attention to how this has implications for media freedom and also the freedom of expression.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Dr. Abati. We always debated this. Who decides hate speech? That's a big question. Moving on to business update, Michael Wilson joins us now from London. Good morning.
Good morning. Fairly directionless, really, as far as the US was concerned. Yes, I'll give you more detail about that. And that kind of pre-weekend lethargy seems to have been the theme with China's data releases coming out this morning. And I would guess that really it's the US industrial production and retail sales figures coming out later today, plus any kind of developments on the stimulus discussions taking place on Capitol Hill. That will actually drive it over local data. But just for the record, China's industrial production and retail sales both underperformed. Not so much industrial production, but retail sales fell by 1.1%. Which is a lot, actually, and it makes it wasn't expected to be like that at all, and it shows that the Chinese consumer remains pretty much in hibernation. And the last time that we saw positive reading now was last year, in December, actually. So China, having shown a sort of consistent track of improvement since March, well, the markets will give it a slight period of grace, but we'll see about that. European equity markets, well, they just ran out of steam yesterday. Again, not really optimistic about any kind of imminent US stimulus deal. Nancy Pelosi, the US House Speaker, ruled out the prospect of any agreement in the next few days. And with the US market slightly resilient, the Nasdaq finishing higher, S&P 500 slipped back. I would suggest there aren't that many incentives right now to get this deal done. I mean, I have to say, I think it's a great pity for these people who are out of work in the United States. But US stock markets, if you think about it, just shy of record highs. No discernible effect on the labour market of losing that $600 a week unemployment enhancement after yesterday's slightly improving positive jobless claims numbers. US politicians really are not having their feet dragged to the fire by circumstances at all. And I think, however, the longer they delay this, the more damage there'll be. But, what do I know? So, as I say, looking forward, we've got the EU Q2 GDP, second quarter GDP. That's coming out about 10 o'clock this morning. And then the US retail sales later this afternoon. actually, you know, they've been actually quite good. If you look at them, minus 8.7% decline in March, followed by a record 14.7% decline in April, but a sharp rebound of 18.2% in May, and another 7.5% in June. So I don't know whether there's going to be a V-shaped recovery there or not, but it's certainly not looking too bad. My worry is this, that, you know, greater coronavirus cases in the Sunbelt states and so on. Are we seeing consumers falling back there? I don't know, but we'll see. And finally, before the weekend, oil, the rallies sort of fizzled out really as far as the oil price is concerned. The IEA, you know, saying that demand was going to be pretty low in 2021. I still am told, and I will be corrected on this, but I am told that prices will be going up towards the end of the year, not so much because of anything that the IEA says, because remember, all these people look backwards at things that are going on. But actually, there are many economies, including the Nigerian one, that would like, thank you very much, oil at a certain kind of price to make it worthwhile for revenue. And finally, gold and silver, they both outperformed overnight. Not really sure why that is, because there's not a lot of risk around. They're not looking particularly attractive as in contrast to equities, but the people have taken long positions apparently in gold. I still think, I mean, we're looking at what 1953.50 announced at the moment. It did get to that magic 2000 level, then it fell back, then it'll get up there. I think we're going to see volatility in these precious metals. And I would say also, of course, that silver is the big Joe Biden play as we speak, because of if he gets in interest in environmental issues. That's the global view at the end of the week.
Well, Michael, two quick questions. I mean, the situation in the United States, we see that the discussion about additional stimulus is stalled between the Republicans and the Democrats. They can't seem to agree on what the volume of intervention should be. But at the same time, employment rates have gone down from 14.7% in March to just a little above 10%. Shouldn't the focus be on job recovery? Now that we see that the unemployment claims have gone down, would that not be a better strategy instead of talking about stimulus, to provide stimulus for job recovery so that less and fewer people can make unemployment claims? And in the UK, I would like your comment on the position of the Royal Society, which is a report that was released yesterday about increasing the pay for people who are sick, and also graduating the follow scheme, not just going headlong to remove it, in order to strike a balance between health benefits and economic challenges.
Yeah, well, as far as business, starting new businesses is concerned, getting people back to work, yes, of course, that would be a good idea. But there are many industries at the moment, particularly service industries in the United States and, of course, in the UK, that are still trying to look at what's going on. This is why all this stuff about the consumer is so important, because nobody really knows whether we are in hibernation or whether they're actually showing ourselves out. We had this, eat out to save the economy kind of scheme in this country, which for a few days each week, which is actually quite popular, and that sort of sent a message to people to get out and start spending again. Whether they do, I don't know. If I'm faced with a growing family and I'm not optimistic about keeping a job or indeed finding a new one, I don't think I'm going to be spending money. I think I'm going to be saving, and I think I'm going to be staying in. But there we are. That might just be me. But I think what you have to do is encourage people out. So to answer the first bit of your question, in terms of new industries and getting people and job recovery, what kind of jobs are those going to be? I don't think people know that at the moment, but there will, people are resilient, economies are resilient, entrepreneurs are resilient. I think things will change, but you've got to give it time. As far as this cliff edge of the furlough scheme happening, I think that is still probably going to happen. I think it should be chamfered. I agree with you, absolutely. If it could come off, it could slope rather than just stopping, I think it would be good. And perhaps if it were targeted in some kind of way to the more needy, yes, indeed. Who are the more needy? That's the question. I mean, they talk about poverty in this country. I don't think we have poverty in the UK in the same way that some African states have poverty. I don't think people are actually starving. I think there are certain kind of levels of poverty that people actually look at in this country, which you would think, with your African background, think that isn't poverty. That's a good life. So I think we have to be careful here. But you're absolutely right. The concentration on job recovery would be ideal if that were possible.
All right, thank you so much for that, Michael. We'll move to Aaron now. But that Eat Out scheme did get 10.5 million people eating out in the last 1 month. But we're moving on to Aaron now for COVID-19 update. Aaron Akarjala is here with us. Aaron, great to have you. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning to you, Rufai. Good morning to you, Doctor.
Good morning. Aaron the Baron.
Good morning to you. And let's start it off from the desk today. We're looking at the global figures in terms of COVID-19. Quite grim. We've passed the 20 million mark in terms of COVID-19. And there are still major worries. And looking at the exact figures right now, as it stands right now, over 750,000 deaths have been recorded. All right, since COVID-19 actually hit the world and is ravaging the world at the moment, with United States still the most infected. We warned over 166,000 deaths, followed by Brazil with 104,000 deaths, and Mexico over 54,000 deaths, and India with over 47,000 deaths. As a matter of fact, these 4 countries almost account for almost half of the fatalities and the mortality rates we've seen in terms of COVID-19, which is very worrisome. And let's see how probably maybe this can be reduced. A lot of things are being done. A lot of vaccines are being pushed. A lot of antibody drugs are also being tested to ensure that the mortality rates for COVID-19 actually drops. Moving away from that, let's actually go to the UK, where something controversial is actually happening, where they've actually said they've quietly removed 1.3 million coronavirus tests from its data because of double counting. And people are beginning to get skeptical about this and the accuracy of the testing figures that are being put out there by the UK. But for the brevity of time, let's just tell you that the UK government right now, if you're arriving into the UK from places like France, the Netherlands, Malta, Monaco, Aruba, and Caicos, you will have to quarantine for 14 days. And it's getting people worried, and it's getting people also very frantic. France are saying they will not take this sitting down, as they will also reciprocate with similar actions to the UK. But as it stands right now, those coming from either France, the Netherlands, Malta, or Monaco would have to quarantine for 14 days as it stands right about now. So that's how things are actually playing out. Now to Australia, where a man in his 20s has died, making him the youngest man in Australia to have died of COVID-19, joining the 14 cases that actually died yesterday. At the moment, Australia have had just 375 deaths at the moment, and it's still relatively low, but containment has also been widely praised because Australia have done everything in humanly possible to contain this particular virus. Remember, major lockdowns have actually gone on in places like Victoria and also forgetting New South Wales. Now, coming to something very, very pivotal, guys, talking about testing and antibodies here. We know that in the UK, an antibody testing is about to go on, and an antibody drug is being tested in the UK with the hope that if that works, that will be administered, which could actually last for about a month. But right now, in Africa, at the moment, countries like Liberia, Sierra Leone, Zambia, Zimbabwe, Cameroon, Nigeria, and Morocco are one of 7 countries who will be testing the antibodies of individuals in that country. This is what the head of the African CDC has actually said, that from next week and also moving into next month, major testings will be done for these things. And if they can help us with the graph, then it would actually explain what the antibody test would actually do, because several people have been working with COVID-19. As a matter of fact, you can see the countries Liberia, Sierra Leone, Zambia, Zimbabwe, Cameroon, Nigeria, and Morocco are those 7 countries that from next week will be testing. Now, this is it here. Now, trying to break down this particular figure, this particular graph actually says that, of course, the the test cassette that will be used for this particular testing. Moving to the previous one before coming to this one, the test cassette that will be used, certainly, of course, a drop of blood will be put in there, and that particular test cassette will check for either the immunoglobulin G or M. Now, moving on to the next slide, it actually explains it. Of course, immunoglobulin M is the antibodies that your body actually produces at the initial stage of the particular virus, while the immunoglobulin G is what is actually produced much more later, and it even lasts even longer. So this will be testing it. So if peradventure the tests are being done and you have 3 lines, as you can see at the bottom of the screen there, that means at some point in time you've either had both the M or G, or maybe you might have all 3, and we can easily know if you've actually been negative if just one line, which is the control line, actually shows. So that is what will be done, and it will actually help a lot to actually know those who have had COVID-19 and how long those people have actually had COVID-19. Thanks to this test.
Well, Aaron, with COVID-19, I think we are now all realizing that with every day comes a new thing. You know, we keep learning every day. Yeah. But with the quarantine imposition by countries, do you think that that is a trend we are likely to see with more countries, as those numbers, as you put it, are not, you know, abated anytime soon? And you mentioned worries. There was a news yesterday about chicken wings being infected. Should we be worried about food infection, food infection this time around?
Now, first of all, you mentioned that's the way to go, because for places and countries that are entering into the second wave, it is good for countries to study these happenings and ensure that those people that are coming in, remember, China at some point celebrated the fact that they had conquered COVID-19, only to have people return from other places into China, bringing another strain of COVID-19 into the particular country. Same as New Zealand, same as Australia. So you see these countries locking down and quarantining people from coming into the country is the way out. That's the best way, because it only just rubbishes the effort that the country's CDC has done over the months and over the days, when somebody else just comes in without knowing his status and just goes in and becomes a super spreader. And you also mentioned chicken wing. Remember, the wet market was what started the spread, reportedly, of COVID-19. So certainly, if foods can actually certainly facilitate the spread of COVID-19.
Well, although the WHO is insisting that it is not proven that you can get COVID-19 either through food packages or imported food. In China, the concern is about, you know, aquatic food and also chicken imported from Brazil and Ecuador. However, let me speak quickly to the fact that Nigeria is going to be part of the antibodies test. As you said, is to check the seroprevalence. But I would like to see a situation whereby Nigeria, the Presidential Task Force, gives us more details about this. I think it's a good move, but I would also like to see a situation whereby Nigeria begins to think of getting onto the pre-COVID-19 vaccine order list. Even the European Union is engaging Johnson & Johnson in the United States. The other day, you brought the story of South Africa, what South Africa is also doing to be able to position itself properly. Because when this vaccine is eventually out there, Nigeria will not only be worrying about itself, it will also have to play a leadership role, particularly across West Africa, for strategic reasons. But 2 quick things. Are you excited that the Premier League will start on September 12th? And what do you think are the possible challenges? And then the US Open is also this month. And Brianna, who won the US Open last year, beating Serena, she says she's not going to show up because she has challenges that will not allow her to perform optimally. Is she just chickening out, or she's just giving an excuse, or that's normal in sports?
All right, Doctor, you know sports gets me excited. It gets me riled up. Always gets me riled up. But the truth is this, with what is going on in England, with them trying to test whether fans can return back to the stadium. They said they would be trying it with snooker. They set a date. That it didn't materialize. It didn't come to fruition. And at the moment, if fans are not in the stadium, it takes a gloss away from football, because football is a spectator's football, and most sports are spectator sports, meaning that spectator events, I beg your pardon, mean that with fans there, it's part of the glitz, it's part of the glamour, where the fans are there cheering people, not just in the stadium, but even outside the stadium. Not having sports with fans, with onlookers, just takes the gloss away from it. We are hoping that there is a better way, or there can be a bubble that would see fans at some point return back to the stadiums or to arenas, like you said in tennis. But at the moment, that is still a long shot.
Okay, Aaron, thank you so much for that.